Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. The Village of Hayward respectfully acknowledges that we are on the land gathered here in the unceded territory of the Comox First Nations, the traditional keepers of this land. Go to public input. Public input is for the purpose of permitting people in the gallery to provide feedback that should be no longer than 15 minutes unless approved by the majority of council. Each speaker may provide a respectful comment on any topic they deem appropriate, not necessarily, excuse me, on the topic on the agenda of the meeting. Each speaker may not speak longer than 2 minutes, but may have a second opportunity if time permits. Each speaker must not be allowed to speak regarding a bylaw in respect to which a public hearing has been held. For the record, please state your name and address, and you'd come up to this microphone here, please. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Due to the amount of people here tonight, I'd like to put a motion forward to extend that period longer than 50 minutes if needed.
Do we have a time frame? Do we have a second? Okay, discussion. Do we have a time frame? Councillor Burchett.
I feel the time frame should be as long as needed for the public to get their comments across.
Okay. Everybody's good with that? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you. Relative to the discussion, I think 15 minutes is a reasonable time. It's at the beginning of the meeting and it's at the end of the meeting, and I see no reason to change that for whatever reason is being cited. It's a reasonable period of time, and as long as everyone sticks to their 2 minutes, we'll be fine. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just by doing a casual count here, there's more than 30 people in the room, so 30 times 2 is more than 15 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, so all in favor? Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Seeing one opposed, motion is carried. So please, for the people in the gallery, when somebody is speaking, please remain quiet. Okay, just allow them to speak, and no different when we go into the council meeting itself. Okay, thank you. Yeah, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize for my lateness. The corporate officers just reminded me that we have a delegation here tonight. Could I be so bold as to suggest that we flip the agenda to allow the delegation? The gallery might be interested in that as well, and got a 10-minute or a 10-minute limit on the delegation, and then allow the public input period to follow.
I agree. Council? Everybody agrees with that?
I agree.
Okay. So we're going to flip and we're going to go to number 6 before we go to number 2. And we'll have the delegation speak first. Michael Loris, Senior Communications Manager, Western Canada Marine Response, regarding increased spill response capacity on Vancouver Island and the potential installation of spill response equipment at Kelsey Bay. Sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And I guess I'll just nod when I'd like the slides to be forwarded. Thank you. Sure. So this session came about because I met with Councillor Burchett and Councillor Polson at the Nanaimo AVICC several months back. We talked about maybe coming up and just sort of introducing our organization and what we do with spill response on the coast. So I have 10 minutes and quite a few slides, so I'll go quickly through this and thank you for your patience. But our organization began in 1976 in Broad Inlet when there was a lot more oil refining capacity in the harbor. We were an industry co-op at that time, but we expanded to encompass the entire coast after the Exxon Valdez spill up in Alaska. So at that time, the Canadian government got involved in spill response, and they decided that polluters should pay for oil spills. So they created a mechanism where companies would have to pay into the organization. Large vessels and oil handling facilities would pay into the organization. So we can jump ahead a couple slides there. No, no worries. So the regime we have in place now is that vessels over 400 gross tons must become a member of our organization. And if they have a spill on the coast, they activate us to respond on their behalf, as well as oil handling facilities. So you can see by this map here that we have bases all around the coast, primarily on the south coast of Vancouver Island, where the shipping lanes are. So that's where the traffic is heaviest, but we do have bases all the way up in Prince Rupert and equipment caches along the coast as well. So we recently went through a pretty significant expansion, pretty much doubling the size of the organization. And where we used to have one base on the island at Duncan, we now have 4 bases. So we have a main facility in Nanaimo. We have a base in Port Alberni with vessels 4 stationed in Ucluelet. We have a 24/7 base in Sydney. We're building a base in Beecher Bay, and we have a presence on the Lower Mainland in Vancouver Harbour and Fraser. So I mentioned the funding. We have about 2,300 members. Some of those are the vessels we talked about, and some of those are the oil handling facilities. And we also have subscribers who don't fall into those criteria, but see it as good business practice to be part of the organization. You can just jump through there. So in addition to our organization, which does the actual cleanup, there's a lot of other federal agencies involved. Transport Canada is our lead agency, so we are beholden to them as a regulator. They set the standards that we must meet. But also we work quite closely with the Coast Guard, who also has response capacity on the coast. And they've recently started these integrated response plans. There's one for the Georgia Strait. There's not one yet that covers Sayward, but they are planning on developing a Northern Vancouver Island integrated response plan, which would be beneficial for this region. We also work closely with the environment experts and science experts at the Environment Canada, BC Ministry of Environment, and DFO. Please. And you can just jump through these quite quickly. So this is just a sampling of the type of vessels we have. So that vessel there that you saw was a sort of the fire engine to spill response, if you will. A lot of people talk about spill response as being sort of the fire department for the ocean. So this vessel will do the actual cleanup. This vessel is a landing craft for remote areas on the coast. It can bring trucks and heavy equipment. Next slide. Next slide. These are coastal response vessels that were designed by a naval architect called Robert Allen in Vancouver to respond to sort of heavier weather conditions on the coast. So this one's stationed in Nanaimo. We have one in Port Alberni and Beecher Bay. These are boom skiffs, so hauling boom to spill sites. We have mini barges that allow for continuous operations so that the skimmers can offload, so we can run 24/7 if we need to on a big spill. And we have plenty of small workboats as well. Coming this September, we will be getting an offshore supply vessel, so a 245-foot vessel that'll be stationed in Beecher Bay. You can continue on. So this is some shots of some of that equipment at work. This is a response that we mounted at Bly Island in Nuka Sound due to a sunken shipwreck that started to leak oil. So this is the how we use the booms and the vessels to sort of track down, chase down the slick, and to recover that oil. So again, similar structures, how we're using boom to contain a slick in the ocean. And then this is another spill using heavy oil. So the 2 vessels are using the boom to corral that oil into the pocket, and then one of those skimming vessels will go in and recover the oil. Another example of some booming tactics. And then this is the shoreline cleanup. So when we recover all the oil off the water, we begin to do the cleanup on the shoreline using a flush system. And the spill response is managed the same way that we would manage fighting wildfires or earthquakes. We use the incident command system, so ICS. It's used in spill response as well as any other major disasters. So switching gears here, this is our forward-thinking planning program, our coast response program. So essentially what we've done is we've mapped the coast. We've brought in data from existing data sets to identify where there are sensitivities on the coast to oil spills. So that could be an environmental sensitivity, like an eelgrass bed or seal haul-out, or it could be a cultural sensitivity, a First Nation site, a burial ground, a clan meeting, for example, or an economic sensitivity as well. So we map those out, and then we develop a protection strategy for those sites. And you can go to the next slide there. So this is for a strategy for Humpback Bay. And so what you can see there is the red line represents the boom. So that's where we're going to do the protection. And then on the legend, it tells us what we're protecting. It's a salmon bearing stream. There's some sensitivity in that area. That's why we want to protect that particular spot. And it tells us how much equipment we need to protect that area, including the amount of boom, and amount of vessels we need to deploy that particular strategy. And so just some examples of some of these strategies for the island. These are all available online through our Coastal Response portal, so you can zoom in on any of those particular areas and see the sensitivity and what it's protecting for the region. So the next step in that program is then to put equipment closer to some of these sensitivities. So you saw that a lot of our bigger assets are concentrated on the shipping lanes on the south. And so now we're being deployed these equipment packages. We started in the Gulf Islands. And our plan is to install one. We have a contract now in place with Sayward Futures to install one at Kelsey Bay. And so it's going to be just looking like that. It's a float with a sea can full of about 1,700 feet of boom. And so the idea here is that we can train local contractors that they can access that boom while we're mobilizing our bigger assets from down south. So here's that model in place in the Gulf Islands, working with Malahat Nation, Pakwachin, and RCM SAR, training them to protect their own backyard, again, while we mobilize from our bigger bases. We also do community education, so we're meeting with coastal communities and First Nation communities to help us identify some of those sensitivities. So if we've missed an area, that they can help us with that information. So not only do we get the information from the scientists, but also from community education sessions as well. And that's it. Hopefully I stayed within the 10 minutes. Any questions for me?
Any councils?
I have a question.
Sorry, we'll go council first. Thank you. Councillor Tinsley.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question about funding. As I understand this, the whole thing is funded by the industry itself. Is that correct, or is there some government involvement?
No, our organization is strictly funded by industry. So we get annual membership fees from large vessels, and we get bulk oil cargo fees from the oil handling facilities. And then when there's a spill itself, that vessel must legally pay for the cleanup. And if it goes over the costs of their abilities to pay, or if they're unable to pay, then there's a ship source oil pollution fund which can be tapped into. If the Coast Guard does the cleanup, and so the Coast Guard can activate us as well, they can also be to tap into that ship source oil pollution fund. So again, it's not going back on taxpayers for the cost of the cleanup. Great,
thank you very much.
Councillor Burchett.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for coming up here. It was great meeting you down in Nanaimo, and you made your way up here. And it's comforting knowing that we're going to have some equipment and kit here to possibly alleviate any serious problems. And I look forward to having my vessel be a vessel of assistance now that it's up here and working.
Great. All right. Excellent. We can reach out when the package is in place.
Anybody else on council? Generally, we don't take comments or questions from the crowd for that at all. But if you have a couple of questions for the next minute and a half for this gentleman, we'll entertain it.
I'm open to that. Yeah.
Where does the oil go that you scrape off of the
Yeah, there are two facilities, one on Vancouver Island, one in Richmond, that can take the oil and it can recycle it into, not to gasoline, but into like asphalt or something like that.
Yeah.
How often do you monitor things like being north?
Our organization doesn't, but there are reports of sort of oil wellings that the Coast Guard will respond to, and that's what originated that Bly Island response. It was a vessel that sank in 1970 that started to leak up. Zelinsky would be another example of that, of a wreck that started to leak up. So our organization doesn't actively monitor it, but we do respond to those with Coast Guard.
Don't have a set time, you just wait till somebody sees something.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming all the way down.
All right, thank you.
They travels home.
Take care. Okay, so we're going to go back to question period. Remember, you got 2 minutes to speak, and please come up to the microphone and state your name and your address, please. Thank you.
My question is, the expenditures that the taxpayers know nothing about, Where's the transparency? And when are we gonna find out where our money is going, aside from always going in camera? I realize you can't tell us what the problem is, but you sure as hell can tell us where the money's going.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, as you know, because you used to be on council as well, that in-camera information is in camera and we can't speak to it.
Yes, but our staff.
Okay, and that will be coming. Okay, thank you. Next.
Bar Street. This is just a little one, but communication is often lacking, seriously lacking to the community. One example here is you issued watering stage 2 restrictions. And I've got these the wrong way around, I think, but I think this was July. So in July, we were told we could only water between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. on certain days, odd numbers, blah, blah, blah. And we were indicated that it was just the washing of parking lots, driveways, automobiles and boats were discouraged and blah, blah, blah. When the Saywood newsletter came out in August, it actually quantified that watering is defined as using lawn irrigation or the use of a sprinkler, soaker or reaper hoses. Hand watering using watering cans or hoses with automatic shut-off valves is currently permitted at any time on any day. That's outstanding, like, just astonishing to me that I was restricted thinking, oh my God, my neighbour's going to come and say I can't water my corn and I can't water my vegetables. When in fact I could have continued using water at any time. So I'm really disappointed that that information wasn't, one of them's wrong or one of them's right, but that's really incomplete information that was communicated. And I think that's indicative of this council.
Oh, thank you. We will, I mean, you're right. I mean, if there's a contradiction between the two, there should definitely be clarification. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
Presented the council with a petition to allow chickens. After 11 months, nothing's been done. You need more information. I don't know what kind of information you need. I'll go to Camber River and get you anything you want. I had chickens in Camber River. I had chickens in Saywood Valley. And I'm not getting anything. I understand one of the councils, sir, did not think that was high on priority list. It is. For a lot of people, it is. On my petition, I said food security. We need food security. You're not providing me with any food security. You're not even providing me with an answer. Say no, then I'll know. I can live here or I can't. I've got to move somewhere where the council will not stand in my way. Don't mean to be rude, but
You're not.
that's just
You're not
how
being
I
rude.
feel.
Okay.
And I think 11 months is about 10 months too long.
I don't disagree.
Thank you.
I don't disagree. We will be addressing it, and I know it's hard for you or some of the people in the community to understand. When we're working with a staff of 3, there are priorities and where it falls down the line, because there are some very important, and not saying that chickens aren't important, but something that takes precedence over something else. So we do have to prioritize for staff time as well, because we only have the 3. We only have 3 staff. Yeah, that's all we have. Councillor Burchett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you for bringing that up. I'm 100% pro chicken. I've had chickens in the past, and I think it's important for food security. And thank you for bringing that up to our attention again.
Anyone else? Yep, no. Well, it's good to see this many people here. I wish we could do this every time we have a council meeting, opposed to the empty chairs. Pardon me?
Yeah, don't worry.
I can't hear you, sorry.
Just a reminder.
Just a reminder. No, you guys are welcome anytime. Okay, so that's it for the question period. Okay, So introduction. No, we don't wait till 15 minutes goes. By all means. By all means. Since there's time.
That we have public works and our public works staff sweeping our streets and parking lots. They drive over a gravel parking lot, get to the recycling center. I see them sweeping. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's to save $23,000 for a street sweeper, which we've had every year. Anyone on that council that's still alive will tell you. So why are they sweeping by hand? And I can tell you that a public works foreman doesn't make $15 an hour.
Well, as you know from being on council, council doesn't involve themselves generally in day-to-day operations. So that question, I'm sorry. Let's be respectful. I'm being respectful to you. Please return the courtesy. So allow the CAO. The CAO can address that question if he likes, but that is something that is done from outside of our parameters. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm through to the member of the public, or through the mayor to the member of the public. Early in, late in January, early in February, the chief financial officer and I sat down and looked at the budget that council was facing for 2023. And the CFO and myself, along with different staff, including the public works foreman, worked to identify different areas, different services that we could cut back on, possibly eliminate or change, where the result would be a savings. So we took that list, and you'll recall, we brought it to council in a budget and strategic planning session, a couple of sessions, and proposed these changes to council. And one of them was the reduction in, it's not a reduction, pardon me. We, with council elected not to bring the street sweeper in this year. When we spoke with the public works foreman about what the consequences of that were, looking at bringing the street sweeper in biannually every 2 years, we agreed as staff that there would probably be some accumulation of granules. The public would recognize this at certain collection spots, generally at the bottom of a hill and such. And the public works foreman thought it was reasonable that they pick up those isolated spots by hand. And it was a savings worth consideration. And that's why we brought it forward to council, explained it in those terms to council, and council supported the savings. And so that's really that's the background to the story that led to no street sweeper being in town this year.
And that was the public works foreman who suggested that.
No, I'll take ownership for that.
Okay.
It would have been me that identified that as a possibility, and then spoke with the public works foreman about a possible biannual, bringing the street sweeper in every 2 years. Please, for the public, for the audience, or for the gallery, please recognize that at the time that the CFO and I first looked at the operating budget, we were approximately $210,000 short. We had a deficit budget of $210,000 at the beginning of the budget planning process. So we had some tough decisions to make in terms of how to meet that challenge of having a net zero budget, revenues essentially matching expenses.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, man. Your second question. You. Yes.
Sorry, please answer the product. Have to water down at the plant, logging saw, whatever the name is. Totally get that. So during watering restrictions, and I understand that they pay commercial taxes, they have their water just blowing out their sprinkler systems, you know, and I understand that we need to keep dust down, fire hazards. So I inquired why we couldn't use salt water. I'm like, we're right there. For some of it, we could be using salt water. For some, it couldn't because it would affect the equipment.
Correct.
That's a gross waste of money. We could even ask them to look at a desalinization plant. If we're going to be facing water restrictions on an ongoing basis for a community, we've got a development proposal, which I know has water issues and they've got to deal with that themselves. But I don't see that a commercial company whose primary use doesn't require water, it's not a salmon plant or something, we could be not, you know, shouldn't be on the hook for losing our drinking water, you know, all the others. They could be using wastewater, they could be using some groundwater alternatives, they could be bulk watering in. I just found that, you know, maybe it could be turned on and off as a sprinkler system. I don't know how it operates. Could it be run for half an hour, off, an hour again? But, you know, in times of fires and everything else, I thought that was a gross waste of fresh drinking water for the community.
You're not alone in that observation. Council has looked at it and we are bringing it back to council. We're looking at different ways for WFP to source their water and to allow, because right now they're covering, I think it's between 40 and 60% of the water bill. So of the water bill that's generated is 40 to 60%. We know we have a new development we're hoping is going to start soon. They're going to require that water. So we are looking at different ways with WFP to move forward on that, because nobody disagrees. I understand why they can't use salt water, right? Because of their equipment. We understand that, but to water the logs, they don't need to use drinking water. So I don't think there's anybody on council that disagrees with that. Mhm. Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Oh, so then we'll go Irene, sorry.
I've been picking up garbage out of the ditches alongside the road. Where do I put it?
Well,
And it's not my job. It's
Nope.
somebody's job. Who said it?
yeah, the park bins would work.
Whose job is it to clean up those ditches and the roadsides?
CAO?
I'm not sure what road you're referring to. I know. Okay, so. Yeah, and I walk it and pick up the cans and garbage too. So that's a ministry, that's a MOTI road maintained by Main Road. So they would tell you that they have a maintenance management plan. Right, so. Yeah, they would tell you that they have a maintenance management plan. I don't know what it is. I'm not involved with their work. I would suggest that we as the village would probably consider ways of helping you if you're really volunteering to shepherd a roadway in the village. I'm sure that we can speak with you about helping dispose of that waste. I think lots of communities have adopt-a-road programs. I'm sure we could work with you to help you alleviate the waste that you're accumulating through your goodwill.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Irene, please.
Y'all just mowing lawn. I think it's a waste of money and time that we're paying people to do it.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can certainly speak with the Public Works Foreman about the need. I honestly can't say that I've been out looking at the lawn. I say that respectfully. I will tell you that today I had a tourist comment on how green the community is in comparison to some other communities that she had been to. So maybe we're growing. Yeah, I'll follow up with
Okay,
the foreman.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'm sorry, Councillor Bolson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to go back to Mrs. Agnew's statement about the condition of the Sayward Road. And even though it isn't a Modi Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, I would respectfully ask council to send a letter to Modi and ask them to deal with the cleanup on the highway on Sayward Road. I don't believe that we should rely on volunteers to go around and clean up. And it's, to me, it's the same as asking the public works workers to sweep the gravel up off the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Good. Okay, so that's the end of public question period. We have introduction of late items. Councillor Burchett,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I have the floor?
I'm sorry,
Do I have the floor?
for an introduction of late items. Do you have an introduction of a late item?
Yes, I do.
That is not an in-camera issue.
That is not an in-camera issue. The lack of financial information is very troubling. Council has not received a variance report since May, and we all know considerable unbudgeted expenditures have been made by the majority on council on in-camera issues which can't be discussed here.
Okay,
We
I
need
have the
an
floor, you can't
introduction
call a
of
point
a
of order.
specific
Excuse me, you don't
item
have the-
to be
hang on.
added
Point
to
of
the
order
agenda.
on the point
excuse
of
me,
order.
the chair, hang on for both. First of all, Councillor Tinsley, when you say point of order, please state to me what your point of order is.
My point of order is a specific recommendation for an item, which is a title of an item to be discussed. That is my point of order. Thank you.
On introduction of late items.
I asked for the floor.
No.
I called a point of order on a point of order. If I have the floor, you can't call point of order. Thank you.
Councillor Burchett, introduction of late items is to introduce late items to the agenda to be approved by council
And,
to be put on the agenda.
and I'm trying to introduce it with a bit of background information, if that's okay.
In CAO, is this not an in-camera issue?
I just said it can't be
Excuse me,
discussed.
excuse me, Councillor Burchett, I'm speaking. CAO? Oh, your microphone, please. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, from what I've heard so far, Councillor Burchett is, I think, on his way to making a point that there hasn't been, well, I heard him say that there hasn't been a variance report provided. Fair comment. And I'd encourage Councillor Burchett to get to what the late item is. If it's about financial reporting, accountability, I think that's fair comment. I'd like to get to what the late item is.
Okay, so please get to the late item. Councillor Burchett, go ahead.
Taxpayers demand transparency on this issue, especially as the outcome may be a reduction in services. Majority council has worked hard to silence
Point
the
of order.
minority.
What is the late
And what
item?
I want,
What
in-
is the late item?
what
Point
I
of
want
order.
is transparency for all council and for our constituents. The
Okay.
late item
Point
that
of
I would like
order.
to
What
add,
is
It's
the
Councillor
item?
Tinsley. Councillor Tinsley. He's introducing the late item.
It's taking a long time.
Councillor Tinsley, please follow. Go ahead, Councillor Burchett.
the motion that council direct staff to prepare a variance report for the first September council meeting and that staff be directed to prepare an up-to-date status report on all council priorities and initiatives for the first September council meeting. I'd like that added to the agenda for discussion. Thank you.
Okay, and now do we want to move that to councillor reports? Or new business? Let's go to new business. Okay, just a sec, we're just gonna find it here. 15. Thank you. New business. Number 15. Okay, any other late items? CAO?
Mr. Mayor, for council's consideration, two late items, both correspondence. One is a letter that was sent to council by Mr. Mike Adama. I believe I'm not sure if all of council's seen it, but I'm aware that Mr. Adama emailed it to all of council. So we want to distribute that letter. It's a letter regarding the development. And that would be proposed to be late item H, correspondence H. And there's a second item that we received, or pardon me, Mr. Adama's correspondence came in yesterday, so it was submitted late. It came in yesterday, and today we received correspondence from Wee Wee Kai and Wee Wee Kum First Nations. And it's a correspondence regarding the official community plan.
Okay, so we'll take Mr. Adama's letter onto H and the Wee Wee Kai, Wee Wee Kum on I. Thank you. Okay. So the agenda, recommended resolution for the agenda for the regular council meeting for August 15th as amended be approved. Do I have a motion, please? You have a late item as well? Your microphone's on. Okay. Councillor Paulson, you have a late item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to add the late item in reference to a letter that was sent to the auditor on July 28th and would like to have discussion around that. The
CAO? Oh,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Councillor Paulson, Mayor and Council, the item that Councillor Paulson is speaking to is a confidential privileged information and cannot be discussed in a public meeting, full stop.
the budget, and the budget is
sorry,
public.
Councillor Paulson, you must stop. It is an in-camera issue and it cannot be discussed in public until we rise and report. So that's. Okay, thank you. CAO. Okay, so again, that the agenda for the regular council meeting amended for August 15th, 2023 be approved. Have a motion, please?
I will move that.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Oops, do you have discussion on that or all in favor?
I wanted to also make a note that from the July 18th meeting, the water report from the people asking to access village water from the people out in the valley. There was supposed to be a report on this meeting to disclose the information that they had received in their investigation about how many people had requested water and what the contact with the regional director involved. And that isn't on the letter, that isn't on the agenda. So I would like to add that as a late item also.
Okay, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can just inform council, I've got a note here. When the minutes were introduced, I was going to make a comment to council that no further requests for water came in to the village office. And I did in fact send correspondence to Director Wally So I'm not sure it needs to be added as a late item. I was going to provide that update when the minutes were being discussed.
Councillor Paulson, do you still need it as late item?
I would appreciate it added as a late item because several times things have been missed on the agenda, and when I attempt to have them added as late items, I'm told that it wasn't included in the minutes or it wasn't on moved
Point of
forward.
order,
So
the item is being
Okay.
added. Point of
Thank you.
order, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Tinsley, Gus, thank
excuse
you.
me. Through the
Okay.
mayor to Councillor Tinsley, I would respectfully ask that Councillor Tinsley control his voice and stop yelling at the audience. And
Okay, thank you. So we're going to put that under J. So recommended resolution. Oh, wait. Water, no, that's late items, sorry. We've got Mike's Development and Wee Wee Kai under, and this, do you want it under correspondence? The water? Or any suggestions? New business? Staff reports? Staff, you agree? Okay, we can put it under H, under staff reports, just a sec here. Hang on, sorry, I lied. Got 12 staff reports.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest unfinished business B?
Sure. Yeah, unfinished business makes sense, number 11. Are you okay with that, Councillor Polson? Thank you. Okay. Okay, so all in favor of the amended agenda? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Minutes of previous recommended resolution that the regular council meeting that was held on July 18th, 2023 be adopted.
I will move that.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? You're okay? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. 6 has been dealt with. Correspondence. We have, let me see, that correspondence from A to I be received. You'll move that. Thank you. Second. Councillor
I'll
Bichette.
second that.
Discussion. We need to pull, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Polson. You,
sorry, I was going to ask to pull A, D, F, and G
to pull.
to discuss.
Okay, so correspondence we receive is, sorry, Councillor Bichette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to also, so I have A, B, E, H, and I.
The Wee Wee Kai.
Uh,
This is the late item, Wee Wee Kai correspondence.
so we'll receive it and we'll discuss it later. Okay, I won't pull I, but I would like to discuss H, Mike Adama. Thank you.
Okay, there is a report coming up on the agenda on Mr. Adama's.
Correct, I read it already.
Okay, good.
Further discussion. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, could I speak?
By all means.
The Adama letter, like there's a report, it would make total sense for that letter to be included with that item on the agenda, not as a separate discussion. I humbly suggest.
Okay. What do you think, Councillor Tinsley? Councillor Tinsley, pardon me, Councillor Gilkin?
That's sure.
Okay, Councillor Polson? And discussed during the the report? Okay. Well, Counselor Burchett.
Yes, I would like it just, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like it discussed on both. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll have a discussion on both. So we have correspondence B, nobody's pulled B or C, right?
Sorry to interrupt. Point of
Counselor.
order. Why would we discuss something twice? I'm just trying to, like, this is supposed to be efficient. We have this item, it's totally related to an item on the agenda. We discuss it then. We do not need to discuss it once, then discuss it again. Sorry, but efficiency is important.
Well,
Thank you.
To be efficient, it would make sense to discuss it all at the same time.
Correct.
But you got both reports. Counselor Burchett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the beginning of the meeting, we received a code of conduct page to remind ourselves of the appropriate behaviors and how to conduct a meeting. And you might want to remind Councillor Tinsley that if you didn't receive it, to please adhere to that.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. So again, let's go back to, do we discuss it all at once going on to the agenda? CAO, what is your input on that?
Mr. Mayor, it's an item of correspondence. It's to council's discretion. It can be discussed as a piece of correspondence, and it can be discussed at the time of the staff report. I'm going to leave this to council to determine. Thank you.
Okay, CO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only comment is when council gets into discussions like this where there seems to be differing views, it's helpful to make a motion, for somebody to make a motion,
Agreed.
have someone second it, and vote on it. So that's just my suggestion.
So
Thank
the
you.
motion is, we'll make a motion that Mike Adama's letter is read with the staff report that is later on in the agenda. So do I have we need somebody to move that in a second, please.
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
further discussion? All in favor? Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll move it to the staff report. Sorry? Anybody opposed? Yeah, I thought I said it. Sorry. Okay, so it'll fall under D, under staff reports. And then we could discuss it all at once. Okay. So again, going back to correspondence, we're going to receive B, C, and that's it. Everything else is pulled, correct? So recommended resolution, that correspondence B and C be received.
I'll move that.
Second,
I will second that.
discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Hearing none, carried. So we'll start with A, Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This letter involves a letter from the Township of Spullumasheen regarding recycling program for used antifreeze and oil containers at the landfill. And I recommend that we support this letter. And I'd also like to ask the mayor, who's on the CSWM, the Waste Management Program, what the current procedure is at our local or regional recycle, and acknowledge that in the response to the township.
Okay. We currently at this recycling don't handle that material, but I'll find out from the CRBD on what they suggest. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put a motion to have staff figure out if we can have the same recycling facility here in Sayward. The same option here.
The same option as what they're stating here.
Yes, the antifreeze and the oil container recycling here.
CAO.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Just could we address Councillor Paulson's point? I think if you could make a motion, Councillor Paulson, I think you were about to ask if we could write a letter of support.
I'd like to make a motion that we provide a letter of support to the Township of Spillimachine, and support their recycling program for used antifreeze and oil. And I believe this is on the agenda for UBCM. And also let them know what the status of our situation is here for recycling.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Burchett?
I'd like to make an amendment to Councillor Paulson's motion that, as well as her stated letter of support, that we look into doing the same here and having the same facilities here.
Are you okay with that friendly amendment?
I support that amendment.
Okay. Seconder, do you still support that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Okay, let's go to D. Councillor Paulson? Your microphone, please.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a letter to UBCM delegates inviting them to attend 3 different breakfast sessions and at a cost of $31 per breakfast. And I am not in support of this request because $31 per breakfast when breakfast is provided by UBCM at a time when we're constrained by our budget seems to me would be frivolous.
Yeah, it's not something that I was entertaining at all to go to. I wasn't going to attend. So, but thank you. Okay, now let's go to, where are we? D. Nope, did D. F. Councillor Burchett?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought we pulled E as well. That's
Did we pull? Yeah, we have to pull E. I wanted E. That's correct. Thank you. Let's go to E. Truck Loggers Association membership. Is everybody in agreements that have a resolution that we pay that membership?
I'll move that.
Councillor Burchett?
yeah. Is that your motion that you made, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Okay, I second that.
Okay, discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry, discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor. I support this membership because being a logging town, I think it's very important for us to have a membership and a voice at the truck loggers
I completely agree.
meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go to F. We had the motion? No, we didn't finish the motion, did we? There we go. We didn't finish. So further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And Debbie Grill, Secret Santa, is F. I don't see any amount being asked for on this. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to defer this discussion until we get to staff report 12C, which is
The grant and aid
the
policy.
grant and aid policy that's pending.
Okay, council? Do you want to move E to the grant and aid policy? No different than what we just did earlier?
I'm in favor of that.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move E to the grant and aid, which is 12C. Okay. And now we were on G. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make an addition to the resolution recommendation and on page 42. Oh, I can't find that right now. Thanks. I would like to make a motion that we add that staff engage First Nations to set firm dates and agendas for a series of forums in 2024
Regarding,
regarding the funding that we're requesting. And it says in the report that there's been some difficulties setting appointment date or meeting dates. And I'd request that we do it as make appointments for forums and set firm dates so that we have that decided for in 2024.
My apologies, point of order. I think we're discussing the Forest Practices Board. I believe Councillor Paulson is on another item. So I just want to bring us back to what we were dealing with.
we're on G. Thank you, Councillor Tinsley. He is correct because we are on G, which is the Forest Practices Board, Forest and Fire Management in BC.
Okay, well. I would like to make a recommendation that the representatives attending UBCM discuss the landscape resilience, and especially since we've had a wildfire in Sayward, and this past year there was no cleanup or tree grinding for the local residents to make sure that we are reducing our fire source. So there's lots of wood that needs to be cleaned up along that seems to be on public property or crown land that's been down since 2019. So I would like to make a recommendation that that be discussed at
UBCM.
UBCM.
Do you have those notes there, CAO? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll do that. So now recommend a resolution that we receive A, C, D, E, F, and G. Is that correct, CO? Oh, sorry, and I. Thank you. So I have a motion, please.
Sorry. Could I speak, Mr. Mayor? I believe we
Sure.
haven't discussed I yet.
We haven't discussed I. Nope. So we're going to wait on that and go to I. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would suggest to council that we defer the correspondence received today from Wewikai and Wewicum First Nation to the September 5th meeting. The correspondence from Wewikai and Wewicum First Nation arrived today. We have received, we've shared that correspondence with our planners at Urban Systems with respect to the OCP. But staff would like some additional time to prepare and provide council with accurate information with respect to the options that you have further to the correspondence sent to you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody make a motion on that, please?
I'll make that motion.
Do you want to make that motion?
Allowing staff time to respond and exactly what the CAO said. Thank you.
And exactly what the CAO said. Do
Yes,
we have a
exactly.
second? Defer to September 5th.
I will second that.
Further discussion? Councillor Burchett,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They are actually asking for a timeline, so time is of the essence for us to get on that.
CAO.
Thank you. I've been speaking frequently with the staff that wrote the letter, and we're okay to defer it to September 5th.
Okay, perfect. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. So let's go back to recommended resolution that A, C, D, E, F, G, and I be received. Motion,
I'll move
please.
that. I'll move
Thank
that.
you. Second,
I will second that.
discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Excuse me. Councilor's report. It's a recommended resolution that council receive this report for information and discussion.
I'll move that.
Thank you. Second,
I will second that.
discussion? All in favor? Just for receiving for discussion. Yeah, thank you. Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And that staff circulate a full year committee meeting dates, each January, pardon me, to the mayor and council so that council is aware of when to expect written reports, and that staff prepare a job description for the roles, responsibilities for each committee or board, so the councillor elected to that board committee understands their duties. Do we have a motion, please?
Yeah, the motion that we receive the report and that we have a clear understanding of the roles and responsibilities if we're on our board, and that we do our due diligence in having written reports on a timely manner.
Okay, so basically what's written here. Correct? No? Councillor Paulson, did you want to second that or? Okay.
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? Councillor Tinsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find that it's very difficult for the various committees to have meeting date lists. We all already have overburdened staff in terms of tracking those types of things. I also believe it's the council person's responsibility to show up relative to attending the meetings and report back, and I think that's fairly simple. So I believe that both those additional points beyond the point that we've already accepted, which was receiving the report, is not needed. Thank you.
Okay, one of the things, I mean, I'll add to that is there are different organizations that cannot plan their full year or do not submit to us their full dates. So that could be challenging. What does staff think about that?
I would agree that some associations don't plan their meetings fully. I think my greatest observation here is I think council needs to clarify its expectations as a council of what's expected of each other with respect to reporting out after meetings. I think just consistency, but it's council's decision about what your expectations are. If you want to indicate that everybody attending a meeting will report if there is relevant information, leave it to the attendee to determine that, or do you just report that there's nothing to report? I attended such a meeting, there's nothing to report to council. Is it verbal? Is it written? Is it at the next meeting, or is there an allowance to catch up and maybe give 2 meetings? Those are the type of considerations I think are left to council to decide.
Okay, so council, do you want to, sorry, Councillor Paulson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I submitted this report because I'm just as guilty as everyone else for not submitting reports. And it comes to the transparency and communications on the reporting. But one of the most important parts of this report is that staff prepare a job description of the roles and responsibilities for each committee or board, so that when a counselor is elected to the board or committee, they understand the duties. I have attended several boards and just get thrown in cold. And when there's no understanding of what the board does or what their mandate is, then it's very difficult to get thrown into one of those meetings cold, and you kind of have to learn as you go along. And I have asked for a briefing on the two different boards that I was on. And because it was at a by-election, there wasn't, they did that separately for me. But if you don't ask, then you don't know what you're supposed to do. So I think the boards that are most important to be reported on are the Vancouver Island Library and the Waste Management and the hospital board, as well as the Strathcona Regional District Board. And
Would you agree also the Saybrook Futures?
well, I would agree to that, but I understand there's some changes are being made to that role. So, but I think the SRD boards are, the information that comes from them that's relevant to Sayward needs to be communicated to council, especially the things that are relevant to Sayward and important to Sayward.
Okay.
And that hasn't happened That hasn't happened.
I
Thank you.
disagree. We did have something that was put aside, the SRD put aside to bring it back to this council for a vote. So I'm sorry you feel that way. You must have missed that. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that we could all do a better job in communicating to our constituents with regards to information the boards we're on. And with regards to your comment, Mr. Mayor, about Sayward Futures, the board that I'm a liaison for, that is a board or an organization that really engages the community and puts a lot of information out there, as well as monthly articles and an advertisement in our local newsletter. So I don't see an issue with Sayward Futures.
Okay, well, so what we discussed here is.
Mr. Mayor, my hand's up.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Tinsley.
I'd just like to suggest that I'd like to make a motion that staff just prepare a recommendation on the reporting requirements for boards, and that all boards are important. If we're appointing someone to them, they're all important, and we just need clarity on the reporting. I don't believe
Councillor
staff.
Tinsley. Councillor Tinsley, sorry, there was a motion on the table.
Oh, my mistake.
we
My
can
apologies. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
No,
I
just
missed
what
it
I
too.
just said. Thank you.
So you can vote on this motion and then make your
Yep,
make your
okay,
motion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so from what's written under recommended resolutions. Correct?
No, it was what Councillor Burchett had made a motion on, and maybe could you repeat your motion? Just so I got it in writing. You said it very fast.
My motion is as written. I'll leave it as written here. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to make it friendly. Sorry? Yes, no, I understand that, but I'm gonna make it friendly that we take out the dates. Take out the meeting dates and keep everything else in. Would council agree to that?
I do know that the Waste Management, the Hospital Board and the SRD produce a year's worth of list of when their meetings are held. And I believe Vancouver Island Vancouver Island Regional Library also produces a list.
Do all the boards? Do all the boards produce a list for the year?
Yes, of those
No,
that I mentioned.
all of the committees that we're on as a council, do they all do that? Like Sayward Futures, the Garden
Sayward-
Club?
Sayward Futures is established every second Monday of
Okay.
each month.
No,
So
if there's a written list, great. Then we'll leave it as it is. Councillor Bichette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I can speak to the boards I'm on. We have a yearly list. Once in a while, they do get changed, and that's easy modification that we can update staff and council on that, so.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. We have the discussion. CAO, we're not done the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two comments. I would encourage you potentially to consider removing the word January. I think we recently, or we're in the midst of a lesson that we've learned that if we, as a council, start to create rules around other organizations' procedures, and if we do that too soon, we get caught where we're trying to create procedure where the other organizations aren't ready yet. And maybe we can change the language so that staff to correspond with the organizations of the boards that council is on to acquire the meeting schedule as soon as it's available. And my other comment is it's not this council or staff's jurisdiction to create job descriptions around boards that council sits on. It's the jurisdiction of those boards. So we can't create a job description for what the board member of the hospital board does, or Sayward Futures or anything else. That's the jurisdiction of those organizations. I think that as sitting board members, if you feel those organizations can provide more clarity for you as an attendee, then early on in your inaugural meetings, maybe you can request, is there a terms of reference? Is there a job description? Things like that. And I think those are common practices. I do think Councillor Polson's hit on something here that as a midterm electee, she may not have been privy to what was provided to the board members at the beginning of a term. So it's a valid point, but I just don't think it's our jurisdiction to be creating job descriptions about external agencies, boards.
Council? Councillor Tinsley?
I would just like to say I totally agree with the CAO's comments. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Polson?
yes, thank you. I would also like to say that it's very good comments and I do agree with the CAO. Thank you.
Okay, well, the motion on the floor is including the year committee dates and the job descriptions. That's the current motion on the floor, unless the person that actually decided, who made that motion, wants to rescind that and make another. Councillor Bichette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe job description isn't the best terminology. I agree with that, but there definitely should be some kind of idea of the roles and responsibility with regards to that. Again, terminology for job description, it's not a job. It's so.
Just so what you're referring to is, would it be fine to sufficient to say that staff reach out to these organizations for their information to have sent to us?
How about more like responsibilities to to the board and the responsibility to communicate to the constituents what the expectations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respectfully, it's very common, and I think for everybody at the table that where you're sitting on boards, it's very common for board members to gather at their inaugural or the second meeting and flesh out together as a group. What are your expectations? Well, first of all, sometimes there's boards where the expectations are handed down to you. This thou shall, you shall attend, you shall you shall participate, you shall be respectful, you shall report back to your constituents, things like that. But that's the responsibility of that board. This council, this staff has absolutely zero jurisdiction in terms of creating a job description, creating expectations or anything. It's really incumbent upon you as attendees to stress your own desires, needs, and any gaps that you might see. So I would strongly encourage you just to remove job description, roles and responsibilities and such, and leave it to you as board members to take this message forward to your meetings.
To your board and find out what we're responsible. Councillor Bichette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to amend the motion to read that staff prepare an expectation for each committee or board so that the councillor elected to the board or committee understands their duties. Is that better wording?
Sorry, understand their duties to council, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just throw that in.
That ties into the first two
Yep.
lines.
Okay, no more discussion. All in favor? Opposed?
Opposed, thank you.
Okay, one opposed. The motion is carried. Reports of committees, none. Mayor report, none. Unfinished business, water report. You wanted to discuss, Councillor Polson, regarding the request for water usage?
Yes, the CAO said that he had some further information to relay to council
Sorry.
based on the inquiries.
Did I miss something?
Yeah, I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we skipped through unfinished business A, village appointments to CSHRD and CSWM. So this was a report that was brought to council on July 18th. And it was requested to be put on this agenda along with Councillor Polson's original report to council.
Yeah, that's on the, but under unfinished business, that was there? Okay,
Yes, that's A, item A.
so you, yeah, generally during the council meeting itself, you want to, yeah, there's, okay, well, you've got the hospital board, Comox, at Courtney, and also for the Strathcona Hospital Board, and then you got the waste management. Okay, so this village appointments, that's not what we're discussing under A right now. We're discussing water, correct?
Your worship, no. Unless I'm mistaken, the agenda as I see it is unfinished business A, village appointments.
Yes, you're right. Yep. Nope, you're not mistaken. Do you want to deal with the water report first?
Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest sticking to the agenda and dealing with item A first.
Okay, we'll deal with item A, that the village appointments to the CSHRD and the CSWM staff report be received for information and discussion.
I'll move
Do I have
that.
thank you. Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. Councillor Polson?
Yes, since I submitted this staff report originally on March 30th, and it's coming around to being on the agenda now due to many delays and other reasons. I would like to say that this report that I'm giving is mostly related to the proper processes and the way things are followed through with. And I've got lots of documentation on what happened with the if people have got their agendas and have read through this, it's very convoluted and complicated, and got more so as the time went on. But basically, the proper process was not followed when and procedures when I was first appointed to these two boards in
Point of order.
last November. And
Sorry,
I
my
would,
apologies. Point of order. We're just receiving the report, and I believe we have to vote on that.
oh, okay.
Did I miss that?
No, we can do a discussion now, or we can do the vote and then get
I
into
believe
it.
we need to vote to receive and then discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so shall we vote to receive first, or do you want to discuss it? We can go either way. No, we didn't vote on it.
How can we discuss them? We can't receive. We haven't
Okay,
received.
we'll receive the report and then we'll discuss it.
I move that.
Okay, second? Your mic's on, so you might as well.
I second that.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. So let's have a discussion.
May I begin my discussion now?
By all means.
Thank you. So, when this all came about, I was, at our inaugural meeting, I was elected to the, Strathcona Regional, Waste Management Board, and to the Regional Hospital District Board. And as things progressed through that month of November, and subsequently Mayor Baker became was elected to the Strathcona Regional District, and then subsequently acclaimed as the chair of that board. I was told that I was no longer to attend those meetings. And so I agreed that the Waste Management Board at their inaugural meeting had put a new bylaw through that recommended that that was passed and recommended that the chair and co-chair of the Waste Management Board be the chair of the Strathcona Regional District and co-chaired with the chair of the Comox Regional District. None of that information, none of that was brought back to council and explained to council and given notice that I had been removed from that. And I agreed with Mayor Baker that I understood the new bylaw and the appointment as chair to the Waste Management Board. However, the hospital board has a different way of electing their chair. And I was told by Mayor Baker that I must not attend the hospital board also. And so that's what I contested, because the hospital board elects their chair and vice chair at their meeting. It's not automatically the chairs of the Strathcona Regional District and the Comox Regional District. So I applied to have that changed and was told that the SRD had provided information after a very long period to the CAO and that I was not authorized to attend those meetings. My position on that is that the Strathcona Regional District says that the chair of the Strathcona Regional District or the vice chair can attend the meetings. And so my point was that with Mayor Baker representing the SRD, where is the voice for Sayward? And there, I was told that by him that he was the voice for Sayward as well as the voice for the SRD. And I don't agree that that's fair to the constituents of our village. And I would respectfully ask to be reappointed to that hospital board and ask Mayor Baker to exercise his power and telling the SRD that, or requesting that the SRD appoint the co-chair who, or sorry, his vice chair, who incidentally is also on the Campbell River City Council. So he would be representing Campbell River, who have 6 people.
Sorry, point of order. The councillor has been speaking for over 3 minutes now, and I believe that's the limit for speaking to a topic. We'd like other people to discuss, is my suggestion. That's my point of order, over 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, through the mayor to Councillor Tinsley, I would respectfully request additional time to explain this and refer back to a previous time when another staff member was allowed 45 minutes to speak.
I'll make the motion
something.
on the request to extend the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Tinsley.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councillor Burchett seconding. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Go ahead, Councillor Poston.
Thank you, Mr. Tinsley, for making that motion and extending the time. I was almost finished, and when things like this happen, I sometimes lose my train of thought. So I will go back to the point where I'm respectfully asking that Mayor Baker appoint his vice chair of the SRD to attend the waste management meeting, which I was saying incidentally, he also attends as councillor of Campbell River City. And because it's done on a schedule for the number of population, you get so many votes per. Sayward gets 1 vote. Campbell River gets, I believe it's 8. And that's why there's councillors from the city of Campbell River on, which includes the vice chair of the SRD. So that's what I'm asking, is that Mayor Baker is able to make that change at the SRD. Thank you.
Well, the one comment that I do have is I've been going to these meetings for, like, with the waste management and the hospital board, I think for 5 or 6 months. The former mayor represented both the SRD and Sayward, former Mayor John McDonald. And he did that for quite a few years, he was on all three boards without any conflict or being perceived as a conflict to the constituents or to the council at that time. So, sorry, Councillor Tinsley, you have your hand up?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, as part of the discussion here, and actually further to what you just said, it was cited in the report from staff, the CAO, and I believe that report is totally accurate. That some of the considerations beyond what you've just described of the previous mayor is that the program, the way it's designed, is also to protect confidential information and to ensure efficiency. So I don't believe we have any issues here, and I have full faith in the CAO's report relative to the structure that is required. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll go CAO and then Councillor Bichette.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of comments. So we have discussed this topic at great length. At the last council meeting, I did state, and I'll reiterate it, that in speaking with the staff at both the Strathcona Regional District and the Comox Valley Regional District, the conclusion that's been arrived at, and I'll fall on the sword here. I wasn't staff when the decision was made, but I'll fall on the proverbial sword and say that there was a premature decision made by staff here in Sayward to begin the process, or to suggest to council that the process begin of appointing members to the Strathcona Regional District boards. Well, pardon me, to the hospital board and to the solid waste board. We've learned that we made a mistake that, and I think the other mistake, and I've spoken with the mayor about this, is it was left to Councillor Polson and Mayor Baker to somehow try to work this confusion out. In my humble opinion, there should have been some injection by the staff of those organizations that I've mentioned. I say this respectfully to them. There should have been some leadership in terms of Councillor Polson being contacted, and there be an explanation of the error made, and for both committees, and to eliminate the potential for this to turn into a potential conflict between two elected officials here that, to the best of my ability, looks like somehow fault is being made, is trying to be made of one over the other. We have no jurisdiction here. I just want to make that clear. This village council has no authority to tell the Strathcona Regional District and the Comox Valley Regional District who their appointees are. That point has been made explicitly clear to me. The point that's been made to me by the leaders of those organizations is that an ignorant mistake was made, accidental mistake was made. In my opinion, I'm just summarizing, there was a failure to contact Councillor Polson from another organization, explain the mistake, and to move forward. We have no jurisdiction here. There's really nothing to discuss other than I'll fall on the sword and apologize to Councillor Polson on behalf of staff here in Sayward that the mistake was made and we won't make it again. And that's about all I think can be said.
Okay, thank you. It's Councillor Bichette and then Councillor Polson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my opinion, Mayor Baker's reporting has been unacceptable, and nor has it been meaningful and informative for reports from any of his board appointments, whether it's the SRD, Waste Management, or the hospital boards. I couldn't even tell my constituents what the Waste Management Board's about, and I apologize for that. So, you know, we should have some better reporting, and if that means we change up who's on the boards, I'm all for that.
Councillor Polson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I disagree with the CAO's information in that the information that I received from the legislative person down in Comox for the hospital board was that the local municipality can appoint or can elect an alternate director to sit on that board. And if you go to the waste management agenda or members, or to the hospital members, you'll see that on the hospital board, there are at least 3 alternate directors that are not the mayor, and they're not the officiating party of the meetings, or the boards that they sit on. So I do take offense to it being said that the information that I got from the legislative person was incorrect. I know that Sayward Council has for many years have at their inaugural meeting, or at the first meeting after the inaugural meeting, which comes right after the other, there has always been the appointments made or the elections made. And all of a sudden this year, SRD is coming back and CVRD is coming back and saying that it's never been done like that, when it has been. And as for the former mayor sitting on all 3 councils, I can tell you that I know of at least one former councillor that was elected to sit on the SRD board. And if you want the name, I can give that to you. But it's not that it has always been that the mayor has attended those 3 meetings.
Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to promote that we move forward with the professional staff assessment and information as gathered. We are moving forward. What happened in the past is nothing to do with getting it right in the future, and we have an obligation to follow the procedures of other organizations, and that has been well researched by our professional staff, and I suggest we move forward with that on that basis.
Okay.
That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. So one last comment, please.
Yes, and my response to that is that I take objection to you saying that I'm not professional. I take my role as elected official in this municipality very important. And I can tell you that I spend hours going over this agenda and reviewing the legal books and the policies and procedures and bylaws. And I object to your calling me unprofessional. Thank
He
you.
never once called you unprofessional.
Yes, I'd like to respond.
Excuse me, Mr. Baker, I am stating my objection.
By all means.
I don't need any.
Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to respond that at no point have I said the words of unprofessionalism to Councillor Paulson. I totally respect her dedication to the job and her interest in all subjects involved here. And at no point did I say that. I was referring to the staff who are professionals that we have hired. That is the only words I used. And I thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Staff report. Reopening the schedule for the Kelsey Center. Recommended resolution that received the reopening schedule for the Kelsey Center. Staff report for information and discussion.
I'll move that.
Second.
I'll second that.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? No, see none opposed. It's carried. Request to alter meeting schedule for the month of September. that council received the request to alter meeting schedules from the month of September, staff report for information and discussion, and that council approves the cancellation of the September 26th council meeting and directs staff to advertise accordingly.
I'll move
Do I have
that.
thank you. Second,
I will second that.
thank you. Discussion? Counselor Polson? Sorry, Counselor Polson put her hand up first, and then Counselor Burchett. Sorry, you're
I defer to Councillor Burchett to go first, so
Counselor
I can
Burchett.
find my notes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe that we should defer this at all. We've had months where we've had 4 meetings, whether it's regular council meetings or special meetings. So in my opinion, we don't need to defer this. We need to keep rolling and keep good governance going.
Counselor Polson?
Thank you. And that's basically what I was going to say myself. I did a review of the meetings that I have attended and that we have attended since January. And in some months, there has been 4 or 5 meetings in a period of 15 days. So I think canceling the meeting in September 26th is not necessary.
Okay, any further comments? Counselor
please.
Tinsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to cite that in the report from staff that one of the references was the ability of staff's time to manage the fact that those meetings were so close together. And I think it's really important that we consider the weight on our staff of their responsibilities. And I think that is the main concern here and the reason that we should accept this. Thank you.
Okay, any other comment? Okay, discussion, we'll go to vote. All in favor? Of what I read, approve the cancellation for September 26, 2023 council meeting and direct staff to advertise accordingly, as well as the first one for information and discussion. You're welcome. Okay, opposed? 2 opposed, motion is carried. Draft grant and aid policy 300XX. That the council received the draft and aid policy 300XX staff report for information and discussion. Motion, please.
I'll move that.
I'll move that. I will second that.
Thank you. Just I'll let the CO decide. Discussion? Counselor Burchett?
Yeah, I find the report doesn't really match up with the demographics of Sayward. Some of the comparables in here, the Fraser Valley, 330,000 people, multi-million dollars in budget. West Kelowna, hundreds of thousands of people. Rosslyn, smaller community, tens of thousands of people. The references for the policy integration do not correspond with a village of 350 people. So I do not accept this report.
Thank you, Counselor Polson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I first put this recommendation forward, I was asking for council to decide on only providing in-kind donations or fund grants, because Sayward doesn't have a huge budget. We don't have anything in our budget that refers to cash grants or donations. And the intent of putting in this report at the beginning was not to get into a very complicated application process. It was simply to write a process or procedure where, or even a bylaw where Sayward is able to give appropriate grants in aid, but not make cash donations to people that, or to agencies or organizations that apply for it. And historically, until late last year, the council had not given cash donations ever. So that was the intent of my report that I put in to have a look at this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tinsley, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Relative to the discussion on the topic, I believe the meeting minutes reflect on staff coming up with this type of policy. I believe that it reflects both the items that Councillor Paulson brought up relative to cash, but mostly your concern was in kind. But I just want to say that in kind costs this village money as well. It's lost revenue, or it's whatever that we're providing. It's the equivalent of cash. And I believe that one of the reasons that it was brought forward, thankfully by Councillor Paulson, is that we wanted to create a fair playing field for everyone who's involved in coming to the community relative to cash or relative to in-kind, and in fairness to all participants, so they're created equally. And I believe the staff report and the draft here is an excellent report, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Gilkin, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I strongly agree with Councillor Tinsley. I believe we've gone over policy for the last few months and making sure that things are set in stone so constituents know that things are getting done and we're doing our jobs properly, and same with staff. So I fully support this. Thank you.
The only question that I have regarding this new policy is it states who can apply. The applicant must be a registered nonprofit organization or community group of the benefiting the area. So they don't have to necessarily be a nonprofit. It can be the Secret Santa, just for clarification. Excellent. But also what we're talking about here is groups like the Secret Santa. By not donating $500, we went in last year with the Area A director from the SRD, and we split $1,000 and went 500 each. And it seemed to make a good impact in our community. So this is in part of what we're talking about as well. Councillor Bichette, sorry. Councillor Bichette and then CAO.
Again, this would be better comparables if we looked at Tassis or Zabellis or even Port Hardy. But when we're looking at huge municipality corporations with multi-million-dollar budgets, I don't understand how that's good comparable, with all due respect to staff and the reporting.
CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments. I think the report from the CFO is sound. It is referencing other communities, and yes, the communities are larger, but this is, so if we look at this, the policy is 2 to 3 pages, and policies need some language to set the framework for how to set the framework around eligibility and non-eligibility. I wouldn't be deterred by the number of pages. To that point, the application itself is name of organization, some contact information, and somewhere between 3 and 4 questions of information to fill out. It's an easy application to make. I think the other thing for council to remember, and we'll address this at budget time, is one of the flaws that we've had, or I'm not sure if I'd characterize it as a flaw, but we haven't identified a budget for requests to come from. And I think that's where Councillor Paulson mentioned a couple of meetings ago, was what is the pool of resources that we have to draw from? So in kind, but also we do receive some cash requests, and we haven't had that allocated budget to draw from. And so council has from time to time wondered, where is that money going to come from? So just a consideration for budget time.
Agreed.
I think it's a sound policy and it's a sound application form, and I'd encourage you to consider it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. CAO. However, I want to go back to the comparisons from where these references and integration were taken from. I checked with West Kelowna's budget online, and their grant in aid budget is $114,000. And their, that's their cash is 114,000. Their non-cash is 314,000. So we're comparing huge amounts. And so I would like to request that we take this back to the table and have comparisons to more size in relation to Sayward, rather than with these big city, big budget places. And just speaking to the Secret Santa program, I would like to say that I was involved with the Secret Santa program for several years, and it's a grassroots program that was started by 3 local people and has continued, and it has relied on donations from the village, not from village council, but from the people in the village and in the valley, and to the point of where people are donating $500, $200, whatever, to support this program. And I know for a fact, because I was receiving and banking those donations and then using the money to put that program into place. So it's not, I can say that the $500 from the Sayward Village Council certainly made a difference, but it doesn't make a difference to the overall project, because they do get a lot of donations. And I just think it's important that we keep that in perspective, that Sayward is not a West Kelowna or a
Understood. Thank you. Okay, so that was a discussion. Councillor Tinsley for the last comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Different comment, which is I totally disagree with the fact that there are not comparables here. Yes, the sizes are different, but in fact, money is even more valuable in a small community with a tight budget like this, and fairness applies to every size of community. And this simple program policy that has been drafted by staff is excellent. It's a way to solve all the problems we've had before and move forward in total fairness and openness to our community. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that was for discussion. All in favor of discussion? We did that. Didn't we do that?
Yeah.
I think we did that. Sorry, it's a long time ago. Okay. So application for rezoning. 18 Sayward Road, sorry, CAO. It just,
Mr. Mayor, could I make a suggestion? So there were several discussions. I heard send staff back to bring it back again with some revised wording. I heard it looks good. If somebody could make a motion one way or the other around it being adopted, or staff to bring it back for approval.
sure, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that it be accepted as is. Thank you.
Okay, second,
I will second that.
discussion. He had his hand up first. Discussion, Councillor Bichette.
Yeah, I'd like to make my own motion, but I disagree with Councillor Tinsley to accept it as is. I think that we should send it back for comparables with comparable to maybe island communities with relatively similar populations and demographics. Thank you.
Okay, Staff, you have any comment on that?
I just really want to reiterate that the amount of money you have is not impacting this policy and the application form. The application form, if I was a representative of an organization, it's going to take me approximately 5 to 10 minutes to fill it out. I have to collect the most recent financial statements. Most organizations' treasurers or secretaries will have that and submit it. This is for council's benefit. To be frank, a lot of us as smaller communities don't have comparable policies. We oftentimes as staff have to go to the larger communities to find comparable policies to draw language from because they have larger staff bases. And when we go to those smaller communities, oftentimes they've drawn from the larger communities to create the policies that we're asking them to share with us. So we share policies with other communities. The CFO, corporate officer, myself get asked, do we have this? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We send the same requests out. Oftentimes we have to climb the ladder to those larger populated municipalities simply because they have the resources. This is clear, concise, and where the information was drawn from is not a levy being placed on your constituents. It's a simple process. I say this and passionately, we're not cheating anybody here. It's a good document.
Okay. So let's bring it to vote. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed. The motion is carried. E. Now we're going into application for 18 Sayward Road, Mike Adama, for the Adama Developments, the Village of Sayward. The council received this report for information and discussion. We'll just start there. Information and discussion. Do I have a motion,
move that.
please?
I'll
Thank
move
you.
that.
Second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? We're going to discuss it in the next. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried, and that that council instructs staff to send a letter to the applicant requesting a formal CAC proposal.
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. Councillor Bichette?
Yeah, I'd like to go directly to a motion to allow for immediate approval of a development permit.
We're in a motion right now. We're currently in a motion.
Then I will rescind that at this point.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Councillor Bichette?
Yeah, after going through the report and the emails sent in from Mr. Adama, I don't think that he's been treated fairly with this process and procedure and being asked to produce documents and receipts in which he's already done. I think that's a bit unprofessional, and I apologize from the Village of Sayward for that.
Okay, we have John, we have John Manson on the line as well. Correct? John, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sorry, just checking to see whether or not you nodded off on us there.
Yep.
The length of this. Councillor Tinsley, you're first.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask, maybe going to John is the best, but the CAO's input around the reflections that the applicant has brought forward and the reality of that. Thank you.
CAO.
Thank you, Councillor Tinsley. Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest that we allow John Manson to provide a summary of or a summary presentation of Mr. Brooks's report. Mr. Brooks was unavailable tonight, so Mr. Manson's made himself available to brief council.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Manson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the first step of what will be a a subsequent report that will be dealing with a recommendation for giving first and second reading to the rezoning of 18 Sayward Road pursuant to Odama Development's application. As we're all aware, this has been a long-standing project. It's taken a long time to get through these steps. It's a complex project, has required quite a bit of work to be done, both by the developer and also by the village. There are engineering challenges, which I think most of council is aware of, in terms of water capacity as an example. We've gone through a lot of the technical parts of this project already. We had particular concern, and I'm putting my engineering hat on as a approving officer with some experience in engineering, and not so much at the planner, because you have a planner, Kevin Brooks, who will be addressing the planning issues on this particular project, but I've certainly been assisting in doing that. But I can speak a little bit to the planning, but Kevin will be taking the lead on that. But I can speak to the water. We wanted to make sure before we came forward for recommendations for first and second reading on rezoning that council had a good appreciation of the water availability issue that Sayward has, particularly during the summer months. I won't go through all that because we've been through all that in June when we met with council, presented a report, and presented an action plan to provide more information and better documentation as to where the water's going and how serious the situation is. That has been reviewed. Council's made specific recommendations that are now allowing us to move forward on the Odama rezoning application, as well as any others that are coming forward to create additional water demands within the community. On this particular application, we've also been working on other issues. We needed clarification on the actual areas that were going to be rezoned. It has changed since the original application was made some years ago. We went to the applicant and in writing requested a number of updates, some of which you see an additional letter that's been added to the agenda tonight. Most of these issues have been addressed. We now know the extent of the zoning, where the particular rezoning areas will be. There was an amendment to the RV zone to amend it from commercial. Now the amendment will be to campground zoning. We clarified in discussions, which we'll get into a little more here, about park dedication and amenity contributions. It's been agreed or suggested that the waterfront area of this property be provided as a trail system for the village use. It's approximately 5% of the total development area. And our staff's recommendation will be that this area be dedicated as park through the subdivision process. So just so council's aware, there are two different processes that will be occurring here. There will be the rezoning process, which we're currently looking at. And then following that, there'll be a subdivision process that will actually divide the land up into smaller lots and will allow Mike to proceed with his development. So the park dedication is being proposed along the waterfront. The other issues that we have asked for his input on is the community amenity contribution. This is within council's rights to ask for a community amenity contribution as in a rezoning where there is an increase in value of land. Kevin will be addressing this in more detail as you get through the process. But you can read the report, and basically the recommendation is that we clarify from the developer, because there was some discussion that the actual waterfront park area was going to be provided as a community amenity contribution, and they are mutually exclusive. You can't call your park dedication a community amenity contribution. It's over and beyond. So we were just seeking some clarification there. And Mr. Brooks had suggested that we come to council, advise you that first and second reading are around the corner, and that we're seeking some clarification on the community amenity contribution. So it's very clear to council and the public when you go through this process as to what that will be and what the value will be. And Kevin will be able to address that further with council in terms of what is a reasonable amount. It's out of my wheelhouse. I'm more engineering and approving officer matters. So I won't speak any further to that other than the fact that there has been discussions around, I think we had an initial discussion some months ago as to whether a contribution to turnaround might be appropriate in this situation. There's been discussions of trail improvements as an amenity. They will be difficult because I think that trail will probably always be a wilderness trail because of its location. It'd be extremely difficult to get equipment in there. And I think our suggestion at this point is to leave it as a wilderness trail, maybe put some picnic tables or whatever out on the point at that beautiful location with the view there. But also it's been suggested as leaving, the developer may wish to provide a waterfront lot to the village. That was discussed verbally between the parties. So there are a range of options that have been looked at. And Mr. Brooks is suggesting that that be clarified so that when we come back for first and second reading recommendations, as soon as we've got indication of that, that we'll be able to move forward. The public will know more accurately what that is going to look like. Yeah, I think that's all I had here. Just for your information, in the staff report, we cover all this off. We do note that council has provided some limited additional capacity for additional residential lots that will come into play as we look at phasing this particular development. We still remain concerned about water pressure in the upper pressure zone. This property extends above your service pressure zone, and you will not be able to provide water to the upper zone unless a new reservoir or new infrastructure is put in place. So we'll be dealing with that when we deal with the first and second reading report, which will follow shortly. We may give recommendations as to how that can be dealt with. And I think the rest is all pretty well self-explanatory.
Okay, question for you. You mentioned that the approval or coming to council for the rezoning is right around the corner. How long is that corner? ETA,
well, if we receive something in writing, I don't expect it to take very long. We've done most of the legwork that's required here. It's dependent on Kevin's availability, and we certainly brought it together to get into this meeting, even though he wasn't able to attend. We didn't want to leave it for another cycle. So I suspect, I see you've canceled the later September meeting, but we would hope to try to get to the September 5th, I think is your next meeting, correct?
Yes, September 5th.
Yeah, it would depend on when we receive the proposal and we get it in writing. I think there was another issue about paying of processing costs, and the CEO can address that. I understand something's happened on that recently in the last few days, and I don't know where that sits as well.
Okay, I just think it's for most of us and all of us, I assume on council, would like to see this development happen sooner than later, but of course, with all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, right? I mean, it's a very important development for the community. CAO?
I think Mr. Manson really covered everything. His last point was that I am working with Mr. Adama in pursuit of a previous council resolution that required the village to collect the fees associated with the application process from Mr. Adama, that those costs not be passed on to the taxpayer. So I'm working with Mr. Adama right now I'm really reaching out to other organizations and legal counsel to try to get some language around a simple agreement around the processing costs that Mr. Adama will cover. So between the CACs, which Mr. Brooks has covered off in his report, and then those are the two remaining items for us to work with Mr. Adama on before, as Mr. Manson stated, we bring forward for first and second reading.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the mayor to the CAO. With regards to all fees need to be paid, we've got receipts here. Does that correlate to everything paid up to date?
Thank you. So there is a slight difference in the amount that the CFO calculated. I think it's approximately $600. There's a difference between what was paid last week and the amount provided to Mr. Adama. My guess is that was a small error from Mr. Adama. But I've sent him an email asking about that. Those are amounts that have been outstanding for a couple of years. There will be, and right now we're already accruing costs with, for example, Mr. Kevin Brooks, the planner, to review the application, to work on the amenities matter, and we need to just get. I want to satisfy council's wish to have those processing costs covered through an agreement. And so that's what I'm working on.
Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious about the staff report from Kevin Brooks, who is listed as the village planner. Until I read this, I have never heard the name Kevin Brooks, and nothing has ever been brought before council to ask for coverage of the expense to hire Mr. Brooks.
Yeah.
So I am wondering what this is all about.
What it is, and I had to get clarification as well. We went into a service agreement with McElhaney, and this is the planner with McElhaney. So it's with McElhaney, John Sorensen and group. We went into that service agreement a couple of years back with them. Did you want to explain more of that, CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the village, obviously the village of Sayward, we do not have engineering staff. We do not have planning staff, et cetera, et cetera. It's typical for local governments, municipalities, regional districts to enter into municipal service agreements, MSAs, with consultants to provide said services when services are required. Mr. Brooks signs the staff report as planner, Village of Sayward, because he is, we have McElhaney Engineering on retainer to provide us services through a municipal services agreement. Effectively, we're asking him to represent the Village of Sayward. We're not asking him to write the report as a consultant. We're asking him to write the report and represent the best interests of the Village of Sayward. The costs that you're referring to, Councillor Paulson, are what I was referring to in my previous comment when I said, and Mr. Adama generally agrees to this, that it's typical for municipalities to ask developers to pay for the processing costs associated to a development application like this. And I don't want to speak for Mr. Adama, but Mr. Adama generally agrees with us. Evidence of that is that he just paid a bill for those type of costs. What Mr. Adama wants clarity on is what type of costs is he going to be asked to pay. I think it's a completely reasonable question. And I've stated to Mr. Adama that I think we just need to get a couple of sentences down on paper that will bind an agreement. So.
Can I just respond to that comment? it would be really helpful to have that information ahead of time, that it's through McElhaney that that's being done. But I know we have retained McElhaney prior to all of this starting as a municipal resource, but I see that the reports from that are included, figures 1, 2, and 3, that Mr. Adama has included are done by McElhaney. So I see that as a conflict of interest. And I believe that we talked about this at previous council meetings, where when McElhaney is being used by a member of the public, that that we don't put ourselves in conflict with using McElhaney at the same time.
CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very valid and good observation, Councillor Polson. I can assure you that this topic, so the situation is that we have a municipal services agreement with McElhaney. To no fault of ours and no fault to Mr. Adama. It just so happens that the engineering consulting firm that he also uses is McElhaney. Myself and Mr. Sorensen have talked about the potential for conflict of interest openly and candidly. He's very committed to ensure that there is no conflict of interest. He is willing to take steps to transfer the file out of Campbell River into another office. For the time being, I've indicated to him that I have all the reason to believe that they're doing good business. I mean, engineers are bound by codes of ethics, etc. And I think Mr. Brooks's report tonight demonstrates that McElhaney, in fact, is able to draw a line between the village's interests and Mr. Adama's interests. I think Mr. Brooks's report is fair, but it certainly is looking after the interests of the village of Sayward and suggesting his report is asking council to allow Mr. Brooks to enter into negotiations on behalf of Sayward with Mr. Adama so that we can have the amenities matter clarified and amenities options brought forward to council for consideration along with first and second reading.
It's not uncommon in the past where an engineering company that works for the municipality primarily, and it's quite familiar with everything that the municipality does, it's not uncommon for the municipality to send a developer to that individual engineering company because they are familiar more. So that it's not something that does not happen though. So
Whether it happens or not, it's still seems to be a conflict of interest.
okay, thank you. Councillor Burchett, final comment, and then Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the mayor to the CAO. So if the community amenity contribution's been met, so we're at a discrepancy of $600 that's holding up this project.
CAO.
Thank you, through the mayor. So I'm sorry if I said something that misled council. The community amenities agreement, the community amenities contribution has not been met. The conversations, I think what Mr. Manson reported, and it's accurate, is that there's been several discussions about what the possible amenities contribution could be. There's been discussion about park, there's been discussion about trail, there's been discussion about a potential of Mr. Adama providing a lot to the village that the village could turn around and sell. Mr. Brooks, who's now been brought on and started to do the planning work on behalf of the village, is setting out for council a request to begin speaking with Mr. Adama and about a community amenities contribution agreement. So just basically beginning discussions, and then Mr. Brooks will set out for council what the options are for your consideration as part of first and second reading.
Yep, thank you.
So in these report and the actual schematic of the land plans, it shows 5+% for the park. Is that not the CAC?
No.
Okay. Thank you. So Counselor Tinsley, sorry, I forgot about you. No offense.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Paulson's brought up a very good point. Although we've talked about the fact that engineering firms do this, dual agency is banned in real estate, lawyers, everything. So I think it's very important that we always consider this in our review of this. It's banned in many industries for a variety of reasons, but I just suggest that Councillor Paulson brings a very good point, and we need to consider this as we move forward in this application in a due diligence process for both the developer and for the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Last comment, Councillor Bichette.
Yes, with the length and time that Mr. Dam is trying to get this development going, we've got jobs for locals here. We've got waterfront improvement. We've got parks and trails, fuel, commercial, possible artisan places. Any more delays, and there's potential that this might not go forward. So I think time is of the essence, and we need to really do our due diligence and get this going.
Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. What I want to say is that I believe we all want something to happen on that property. I would suggest that we also have the obligations we're considering here about doing it right and following full procedure and risk management. I also remind all of us that the proposals from the applicant have changed. I believe this is the 4th time. It's not like we haven't been doing our part. I believe that we have to consider that in everything we do relative to our performance as council. Thank you.
Okay, so we are on the middle one, that council instructs staff to send a letter to the applicant requesting a formal CAC proposal, correct? So we have a motion. We just did a discussion. All in favor?
I'd just like to ask when Mr. Adama is going to address his letter.
Well, there's a question period coming up. The letter just came in.
We moved that to.
No, we have an end question period at the end, as we do, but we also moved, the letter was just got in, so we brought it in as a late item. Correct?
But we moved the letter to the discussion about Mr.
Right, in this, and then we still have one more to do. We still have one motion to make, and then we can discuss the letter. Okay?
There's a motion on the table for the second part of this.
That's correct, for the council to instruct staff. So all in favor, your microphone, please. All in favor? For the CNC, for the middle, opposed? Councillor Paulson is opposed. Okay, and that council instructs staff to enter into negotiations with the applicant for a community amendment contribution commensurate with the lift of the value of the land. Motion, please.
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion? All in favor? Oh, discussion, sorry. Councillor Bichette?
Yeah, will part of the discussion be allowing Mike Adama to speak to this so we can clarify this?
Generally, during a council meeting, you don't have the public speak. You could speak at the end for it. Excuse.
Rude. We're human beings, and you've got an elderly group of population as your demographic. So I'm afraid I'm ready to talk in one moment. If anybody needs anything, would anybody like a drink, and get them some water and hand it out.
Mr. Mayor, it's not part of our council procedures to offer refreshments or a break.
Okay. Anybody is welcome to help themselves to the water jug. Just because David is in the way of it, you can. No, we are sitting here as well as you are. So please, okay, please. Ms. Jones, thank you. Thank you for your input. Let's finish this up. Okay, David, if you'd like to move to another seat so people have access to the water, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so we're voting on the CNC number 2. All in favor? We've lost Councillor Tinsley. Oh, sorry, we're interrupted. We can finish discussion. We are on that council instructs staff to send a letter to the applicant requesting a formal CAC proposal. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to amend that resolution to add a time factor to that, a date that this has to be addressed by relatively soon. I mean, we're dragging this on a long time.
Mr. Manson, is that something that is feasible?
Your worship, council, I think we could get a letter out in a day or two. It's a question when we get the response that obviously will determine when we come back.
Okay, so we can send a letter out this week.
Absolutely.
Okay, Councillor Burchett.
So then that motion would get amended to have that date.
That the letter gets sent out this week.
Thank you.
Okay, so amended motion, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And the next is that the council instructs staff to enter into negotiations with the application for a community amenity contribution commensurate with the lift and the value of the land.
I'll move that.
I will second that.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Okay, Mike Adama's letter. Who wants to address it? CAO?
I can, I think through Mr. Manson's comments, through the motions that have been made, through Mr. Brooks's report, I think we're moving forward. For council, I'd like to stress that we're not dragging our feet. We're not dragging our feet. We're not wanting to slow this down. We all want this to be done as efficiently and as judiciously as possible. In Mr. Adama's defense, in no fault of his, he's had to endure a turnover of several CAOs. It means that for me as a CAO, I have to read the 2-inch file that exists in the office. For the CAO before me, they had to do that, and the CAO before that person and that person. I think we're 4 to 5 CAOs on Mr. Adama's file. I think council probably has some compassion for him having to endure that. But I want to assure council that not Mr. Manson, not Mr. Brooks, not myself are dragging our feet on anything. And I think we're making progress. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
There seems to be, from the email or the letter that was received yesterday from Mr. Adama, there obviously seems to be a disconnect. Go ahead.
I was a bit surprised to learn that a letter had been sent to council. The letter begins by saying that there's no movement on the file, and there was a report on tonight's agenda from Mr. Brooks, which clearly demonstrates we are moving forward with the file. It's a step in the process. I believe respectfully that it's really easy just to say we want this development up as quickly as possible. Everybody understands the economic development benefits of a development of this magnitude, including me, including all of the staff representatives working on the file. But it's critically important that we make sure, as you said earlier, that all of the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. And sometimes it's painful. I can say for myself, small town CAO, some of this is new, and it takes extra time for me to review and get my feet beneath me in terms of what's required of me. I'm very grateful to have Mr. Manson and now Mr. Brooks. And I believe Mr. Manson's stated already that we feel, he feels, and we feel, I stand behind him, that we can have something contingent upon Mr. Adama and Mr. Brooks working together in a timely fashion. We can have something before council on September 5th. And I think if Mr. Adama was asked, he would indicate that he has enjoyed some connectivity with me. We have made some progress together over the last few months.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just reading here in the letter, the CAO is asking for clarification on items already decided upon. So just can you please clarify that? Through the mayor to the CAO.
I think that would be a question for Mr. Adama during question period.
Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Were we not allowing Mr. Adama to speak with regarding this now versus at the end? Didn't we decide that already?
So, Mr. Mayor, what council did is they agreed to take the correspondence and add it to this item. Correspondence doesn't include a question period. Question period is question period. So question period at the beginning and question period at the end. You agreed to add the correspondence onto the staff report section.
Right. Does anybody, we seem to have lost a council person. Does staff or council have any concerns about having Mr. Adama address the disconnect that Councillor Burchett is? Councillor Tinsley?
I believe that, staff can work with the applicant relative to what they've written in their letter. I don't think, the applicant will have to address the public when this eventually, whenever it is moving to the next steps. And we all have to be reminded that there's a number of steps here and huge public input. And we have to be reminded that what was called a large development has now been scaled back to approximately a third of its amount. Don't get me wrong, it's still important. We all want to see things move forward. But I believe that staff can work with the applicant, and the applicant will have numerous times to continue to justify and defend that company's application.
Okay, so why don't we look at, because we're looking at bringing something back on September 5th. Why doesn't the CAO have a meeting with Mr. Adama and bring back a report on September 5th, fulsome discussing everything that's going on? CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respectfully, you've just approved a motion for Mr. Brooks to begin working with Mr. Adama. So the concern of connectivity, I'm happy to sit down with Mr. Adama. I think there's a question period coming up, which is going to provide Mr. Adama the opportunity to speak to his letter. In terms of what you're asking, we've already as staff made a commitment tonight that we believe we're going to be able to bring back on September 5th the zoning application for first and second reading, contingent upon staff's, including Mr. Brooks, ability to work with Mr. Adama towards the community amenity contributions. I think Mr. Adama is motivated to do that as well. So my suggestion is that we continue on with the agenda, that the question period will come up for Mr. Adama, and then there'll be an opportunity for Mr. Adama himself to speak to his report, including some of the points that council has brought up.
Okay, Thank you. Councillor Burchett, last comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put a motion on the table to allow Mr. Adama to speak now just regarding this letter so we can put it behind us and move on if he so chooses.
We only have two more things left. Really on the agenda before we go into question period.
Do I have to repeat my motion?
Yes, please. Could you repeat it slowly?
Put a motion on the table to allow Mr. Adama to speak towards this letter only so we can put it behind us and move on if he so chooses.
Thank you.
I second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Opposed?
3 opposed. We've got 2 more things to deal with and we'll deal with it in the question period. Okay. Carried. UBCM, community to community, C2C grant application. Recommended resolution that the council receive the UBCM community to community CDC grant application report for information and discussion, and that council authorize staff to apply to receive the UBCM community to community C2C program September 1st, 2023 intake for the amount of 20,000, and that the village of Sayward agrees to provide overall grant management.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to add that, this is where I want to add this, that staff engage First Nations to set firm dates and agendas for a series of forums in 2024.
Okay, so that's a friendly amendment. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can confirm for Councillor Paulson and for all of council that this project is in fact designed to organize those meetings. So there's no need to, respectfully, there's no need for the additional addition to the motion. The program itself has 2 components to it, and one of the components is to fund forums with the First Nation. And I've been speaking with Weeweekai and Weeweekum First Nations, and we are right now working to schedule a meeting with mayor and council and with chief and councils. You're going to have to help me, Mr. Mayor, with the term, the ethno-history. I'll not.
Yes.
With a presentation. So I'm working on that right now. So we won't be waiting for till 2024. We'll be meeting with chief and council in the fall.
True, but it'll be easy to implement the for the date request from Council Paulson as well for 2024, correct?
So I believe Councillor Paulson, if I remember correctly, said 4 to 5 meetings, and I haven't designed the grant application yet. It's being done in conjunction and in combination with the First Nation staff. So I think I would be comfortable just saying to you that the intent of this particular project is to bring mayor and council and chief and councils together in forums to build relations, and you will definitely see that as an outcome of this project. Of course, it has to be approved, but that will be an outcome of the project, unequivocally, full stop.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you. When I read through this grant and the program application guide on page 44, it lists 6 forum and or agreement topics. And so that's why I'm asking for meetings to be set and firm so that we know when those meetings are coming up.
Okay.
I think we're talking the same language. I'm just saying it's going to be part of our program that we write and design. And I just don't, there's a fair chance, Councillor Paulson, that some of the meetings will happen in 2024. I think maybe we're splitting hairs here. I think
so.
You're saying 2024, and I'm saying I don't want to say 2024 because I think there's a chance that we're going to be meeting in 2023. We're going to be meeting.
just the council come back with the, or the staff come back with dates.
Can I speak?
Sorry, it's Councillor Polson first, then Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you.
Just want to point out that the grant is reported as a pilot program for 2023 to 2024, and there's not very many months left in 2023. So that's why I'm projecting to 2024 because
Okay.
of what it says in the application.
So we have a motion on the floor. Could we have it repeated, please?
Could I speak?
Oh, sorry, I forgot about you again. Sorry,
Thank you,
when you're
Mr.
not
Mayor.
sitting here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with the CAO. Everything is covered in the application. The whole process is about eventually setting up meetings and connections. I think the motions as set out are perfectly reasonable and we should accept them as is. I don't want to put any more burden on the staff to come up with things that are not part of this process. I think it's reasonable, the motions as presented, and I think we should accept them as is. Thank you.
Okay, so what's the motion on the floor? Was that with the amendment? Your microphone, please. Okay.
My amendment would be to add that staff engage First Nations to set firm dates and agendas with a series of forums in 2024.
Okay, so we have a friendly amendment with the motion. So any further discussion, CAO?
So respectfully, the motion gets forwarded to UBCM. If I submit it, this motion restricts me from including meetings in 2023.
Okay.
I don't mean
So
to pick.
no, understood. So Councillor Polson, do you want to revisit that amendment? Your microphone, please. Thank you.
At the end, add 2023/2024.
Okay, thank you. Good. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed, motion is carried. Okay, council action list. Recommend a resolution that they receive the action list of the staff report for information and discussion. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that.
Second,
I will second that.
discussion? All in favor? Oh. Councillor Bichette?
Yeah, given that we received this action list now and it's 5 pages at least.
Defer?
Little unacceptable. We should probably defer it or table it.
I have no problem deferring this to the September 5th meeting. December 25th. Okay, September 5th meeting, have this deferred. Council agree?
Yes.
If a don't need motion, everybody agrees? Councillor Polson? Okay, it is deferred. Thank you. UBCM, convention verbal update. The council received the UBCM 2023 convention verbal update for information and discussion from the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to really briefly tell council that I received one piece of feedback from council regarding the UBCM appointment book. That was from Councillor Tinsley. It was regarding a meeting with emergency management. The mayor and I are getting together in the next couple of days to further discuss some ideas that both he and I have for meetings with various ministry staff, and that we'll be submitting those meeting requests prior to the deadline.
Okay, so that's for information. Councillor Bichette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What are we deciding on who's going?
Yeah, that's not part of what we're just discussing. So we'll discuss that later on. So where are we? Councillor Bichette?
Can you please clarify later on?
Yeah, it's not, that part is not on the agenda. We'll talk about it in the next few minutes. Okay.
Can you please clarify the next few minutes?
We will speak to it. And I can't give you an exact minute because it depends how long people speak for. But we will speak to it in the in-camera session.
Why would it be in camera?
Excuse me,
Because-
can we deal with the motion on the table and move on? Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table? Can we repeat the motion? The motion was to receive the verbal update for information and discussion for UBCM from the CAO. All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed, motion is carried. Emergency service, nothing. Bylaw, nothing. New business. Mr. Burchett, Councillor Burchett, you have something for the new business?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion for the variance report that council directs staff to prepare a variance report for the first September council meeting, that staff be directed to prepare an up-to-date status report on all council priorities and initiatives for the first September council meeting.
Okay, that's your motion.
Would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
That council directs staff to prepare a variance report for the first September council meeting, and that staff be directed to prepare an up-to-date status report on all council priorities and initiatives for the first September council meeting.
Okay, so do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Councillor Burchett.
I think this is extremely important because of the lack of financial information that we received as council, and that we haven't had a variance report since May. We need to let the taxpayers know where their money's going. Transparency is very important, especially with the outcome may be a reduction in services to the public.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe at this time we have fully qualified CFO and staff. Things are on track. We've addressed budget variations as we've gone. I don't believe that it's in the interest of the village and taxpayers to have staff put extra time into something that will inevitably come out in part of the process of full financial reviews that are duly scheduled. So I totally disagree with that representation. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can tell you that staff, myself and the CFO already have a variance report in draft form, just being reviewed and exchanging some comments on it. So that will most assuredly be available for the September 5th meeting. And an update on the strategic priorities is likely achievable as well. So
Okay, perfect.
I don't think there's an issue with either one.
So it's going to be there September 5th. Councillor Paulson?
Yes, I would like to make a comment about Councillor Tinsley's statement that variances have been dealt with as we go along, because that simply is not true.
Thank you. Okay, so
Could I please respond?
please.
I regret people explaining or trying to accuse me of saying something that's not true. We have had conversations around variances. I fully acknowledge and will vote for exactly what the CAO described, which meets everyone's needs, and that is transparency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a vote on that. We need to vote now. We should
I'm in
wait.
favor.
Well, let's vote now. All in favor of Councillor Burchett's motion? Opposed? Sorry, you're opposed, Councillor Tinsley?
No, I didn't drop my hand fast enough. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, motion is carried. Public question period. For the purpose of the public question period is to enable citizens to ask questions of council. Issues that are important to the citizen ask the question. Speakers are asked to limit their question to one each, and if time permits, everyone will have the opportunity to ask a second question. Speakers may ask a second question. Citizens are asked to state their name and address and have 2 minutes to speak, please. Sir.
Your Mayor and Council, Alex Turner, 1727 Saybrook Road. You may recollect that a few council meetings before I came to you to request some relief around the charge for the Garden Club column in the newsletter. I received a message from your CEO suggesting that a compromise had been found, that a quarter page at reduced font would be a compromise. Now, that's hardly a compromise because that's exactly where we were and what I was requesting relief from. So I wouldn't typify that as a compromise. I think the key point here is that the Garden Club column is not an advertisement in any sense. It is a public service column, which I think does add to the value of the newsletter. It's a public service. The Garden Club itself is a public service. And as such, charging us to have a half-page column, I think, is extraordinarily difficult for us. As I explained before, Garden Club brings in outside speakers to address the public. And when you add up the $25 a month for an extra, to have a half-page column, that's the equivalent of another speaker that we can't have once a year because of that. So I think perhaps it wasn't clearly understood when I was here before, but I would ask that some relief be given to this. Right now, the column is not being written or published, and I'd like to go back to doing that, but it can't be done if the club has to pay.
Are you writing an information piece
Yes, it is an information piece.
that help people understand how to, I don't know, plant a petunia?
Yes, it consists of two parts. Generally, the first part of the column has general gardening information that's topical for that time of the year. And then the rest is information about what the Garden Club has been doing or is currently doing. So it's purely an information column, not an advertisement as such. And I think it's fair that we should get relief from that. In terms of the overall picture, I don't think it's going to make a big difference to the village to lose $300 a year revenue from the Garden Club, but it will make enormous difference to our club.
Well, I think the clarification needs to be the fact that it is an information piece, which is good for the public,
Yes.
right?
Yep,
Not a promotional piece.
that's correct.
And I think that's maybe what I didn't understand before.
Yes.
So I think it's important that if it's an information piece and it's adding value to the residents, that's different, right?
Absolutely.
But in terms of giving every club organization the same discount, right? This is the problem that we run into. So we have to put everybody under the blanket, right? If you're doing an ad, if you're doing an endorsement, we as a council have to make sure that every organization is treated the same
Yes. Well,
and not play favorites.
for instance, the health center has sometimes a full page, and on the basis that you said, it's in public interest to do that. And I believe that the Garden Club's activities are in the public interest, and we should have that relief.
Thank you, Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for speaking, Alex. And I supported it last time and I'll support it again. And I think we need content as an editorial for Saybrook News, and it is a public service, and I don't think it should be charged if it is an editorial, not an advertisement or promotion. Thank you.
Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Mr. Turner's comments, and I would suggest that he just put them in writing to council, and we can review that again at a future council meeting. Thank you.
It's September 5th.
Yes,
Councillor,
I can give you a letter for September 5th.
Councillor Burchett,
Can we just make a motion now?
you can make a motion at any time.
I'd like to make a motion that we allow the Garden Club to do editorials for free in our local newspaper, effective immediately.
No, this is required a second. We need to have a second, then we
Oh.
can go into discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay, now discussion.
I think the reason for question period is for people to provide information or ask questions, and the response is to come back to the person that's asked the question at a later date. It's not to be decided at
Agreed,
as part of the council meeting.
agreed, but you just seconded. So any further discussion? Sorry. Okay, all in favor of Councillor Bichette's motion? Councillor Bichette. So there's opposed. Or opposed, so Mr. Turner, if you could bring back a letter for the 5th. Okay, or prior to, like a week before, so we can hit the agenda. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? State your name and address, please.
David Malinsky, 431 McMillan. Approximately a month ago, I came before this council and spoke about an emergency issue that had occurred during a local fire. Made a suggestion. All I'm looking for here, and now, as Councillor Polson has put forward, has a resolution or an answer or anything regarding that data sign in Campbell River
Thank you.
being available.
CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I called Main Road and was referred on to ministry staff and sent them an email. I have not heard back, and respectfully, I just haven't had time to follow up, but I will.
Okay, so we can have an answer to Mr. Malinsky shortly.
I'll work
When you get response.
when I get a response. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Do you want to state your name and address, please?
Tracy Jones, 251 Spa Street. So I'm only allowed to say one thing. We haven't had a town hall that we know of or that I'm aware of for approximately 12 years. So I request an open town hall for open discussion with the community and to engage with the community in a non-restrictive nature, but in a respectful nature.
Thank you. So we can bring that to a council meeting and have that discussion. Councillor Gilkin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe, I can't quite remember, but we had discussions about a townhouse a few months ago. I can't remember, it had to be early spring. We were discussing this and we were planning to bring it back to council at a later date. I'm not too sure when that's going to happen, but we were hoping to get one planned for next year. Obviously, that's with, you know, staff load and whatnot, but I absolutely would love to see a townhouse, and I fully support having one for next year when our staff load is a little lighter. Thank you.
I'm sorry? Well, you just did. I think you just did. This is something CAO.
I could just fill in a gap here. Councillor Gilkins recalling a conversation that council had during committee of the whole meeting regarding budget planning, and believe staff will be organizing budget planning sessions for early in the new year with council. And so it would be timely to be looking at something like that for early in 2024 as part of budget planning.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Adama. Sorry about that.
Okay, as far as the letter goes, I won't speak too much to it because it's all in italics what our comments on. The processing bill that was sent to me, you mustn't have read it because your lawyer overcharged you twice. And that's why we don't want to pay that. It's $1,200. They overcharged twice, and if you read their bill, it's blatant English. So you want that money back to them. I don't want to pay somebody else's. That's why we just paid the $5,500. So there's like lots of things. Of course, we started this process 4 years ago. Actually, Lisa Clark was CEO with John McDonald when we started this, right? So it's been a long ride, and I get what happened. You know, I mean, I think I've been pretty patient.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's time. You know, we've spent a lot of money up there. You don't see the money that's been spent. There's a lot of money spent, and we need to move forward, so. Mr. Tinsley said that we've changed 4 times. Well, a couple of little things have been added, but we haven't changed nothing from the basic plan. What changes is every time another approving officer comes on board and you want something different. And then we have to change, we have to put an amendment in for that. That's the reason these changes are taking place. You know, like, for instance, because of the water, he wanted us to change the RV park from commercial to PA1, I think it is. That means.
Okay, let me just interject.
Much,
Let me
but-
just interject for a minute. Council, are you approving for Mr. Adama to go over?
I move that we let Mr. Adama address the letter and give him fair chance to explain his status. Thank you.
Do you have a second on that?
I second that, considering you've waited a long time.
Discussion, just a
Can
second.
we,
Discussion.
discussion?
Councillor Tinsley,
I would suggest we'll allow Mr. Adama to speak for another 3 minutes on this topic. Otherwise, he can come back and do a presentation to council to address any further things with the development, because we are more than welcome to have further information from him. Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Paulson,
Once again, we are making Mr. Adama come back again and again and again. This process started in 2019, and it was set up to run in collaboration or connection with our official community plan that was supposed to be completed in 2021, and the
Point of
official
order. We are
the official
voting on
community
whether Mr.
plan
Adama can
still
speak
has
further.
not had its.
Point of order.
its,
We are voting on whether Mr. Adama can speak further. Thank
yeah,
you.
we're discussing. We can
Okay.
get into all that after.
All right.
That's not a problem. So the motion on the floor is for Mike Adama to continue speaking. All in favor? Opposed?
No, not for.
That was in 3 minutes.
It's open.
I'm not pressing that. I just
thought we needed to
clarify it. That's all.
No, just the original motion that was put out.
Yeah.
Okay, again, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing one. Motion is carried. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I forgot what I was saying. But anyway.
Me too.
The water, so that's what we're talking about. So they made us change, or they asked us to change from commercial to PA1. Because with commercial, you need 150 liters a second. And PA1, I think you need 60. So they said, you know, because it's an RV park, it's not heavy water use. John Mason said, you know, he gets all this, that. So things like that, we've had to change along. But to go back to your question on redundancy and stuff like that, what's happened here is, you know, with the CAOs changing so much, and I actually counted 7. You know, John France being a couple times, you know. But so every time this change, and then, you know, you get, every CEO has a different experience, like their level of experience. Some, you know, like Jason Johnson, he didn't want to touch it. He just gave it to the SRD, which, you know what, I'm fine with that. So we did that. And the SRD said, you know, we're just looking for a couple of things here. We did that. Boom, we're ready to go. And this is where costs, I don't get this. Costs to the village, which of course they want to transfer onto us, is, you know, now we'll hire John Manson. Well, you know, yes, he's very experienced in this thing, but we're already there with the SRD. The SRD does this. This is what they do. And so now John Manson came on almost a year ago, 11 months ago. That's when he was hired. And that's when I met with him and John France. We had a meeting and then we went on from there. So we're almost a year now. And you know, I didn't hear from John for 4 months, 3-4 months. He was away traveling and this and that. And here we are in August, you know, like I've been saying to Kira, when we going, when we going? Oh, you know, we're gonna be here this month. And then we're there, oh no, it's August 15th and now nothing. So yeah, this is why you got the letter. Like, we're just starting to get to the end of it, eh? You know, so I think we're still being pretty kind here.
Understood.
But this delay, we have redundancies in payment, like given McElhaney, we, as for this water system, we put a water system in a water system up on the hill. We're gonna do that, all done, the health board said, yeah, we can do that. That will give us a residential water flow in case a fire came up. It's for 2 hours. Then council knocked that down and hired John Manson. So, like, you know, we're paying, and these McElhaney bills just come in just steady. They're just a wave of invoices. And this keeps going every time we're asked to change something, amendment or whatever, you know, and nothing has changed. You know what I mean? I still look back in day one, what's changed? Let's just go to work and start working. And we're down to, you know, we're only asking for 9 lots and the RV park just to get going, right? But now you guys said, oh, we got room for, you know, 77 houses, so hey, we'll take that first phase then, right? It's just all, you know, too many chiefs in the pot, right? They're chefs. It's just like, what a change there, right? So,
I don't disagree with you at all. I think
but
you've been very patient.
if you guys are saying, you know, September 5th,
Mhm.
I can wait till that long. Let's do it though. That, you know, this will be the first time I've seen anything maybe get done. So let's do it.
September 5th.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay.
Tracy Jones, 251 Squash Street. So speakers are asked to limit their questions to 1 each, asked, not ruled. And if time permits, after everyone has had an opportunity to ask questions, speakers may ask a second question and citizens will be asked to state their name and address. So does anybody have an objection? I have a few observations on today's meeting and another couple of questions.
I do believe it does state that you're allowed to ask a second question. Which is correct.
But it did say speakers are asked to limit their question. Okay, so it didn't say it was ruled. You made it sound like I was ruled to only ask one question. So I'm just.
Actually, the procedure bylaws, CAO.
Respectfully, Mr. Mayor, the public speaker needs to ask council permission, not the audience. So I would suggest council follow the procedure bylaw. We're in a public input period. Address council with your question and appropriately. Thank you.
Councillor Bichette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Didn't we discuss this at the beginning of the meeting that we'd have more time for the amount of people here tonight? So, you know, in my opinion, please go ahead.
For number of people, that's correct.
Well, if nobody else wants to, does anybody object on that? I ask. Most of mine are actually an observation rather than a question. I think I've 2 questions. So first of all, I would just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and thank you for hosting the meeting for us. And I hope that we start to move forward as a community to engage more actively with you and people to read the bylaws on their OCPs and to understand what you're paying your taxes for. With regards to the recycling and antifreeze and oil containers, I previously lived on Penner Island, which was CRD, and they were always accepted there. So I don't understand that it's a landfill issue. It's more that we don't have a container to put them in. And I don't think we need to write support letters to anywhere. I think it's a case of us just contacting wherever our waste goes to and saying, if we put it in our recycle, if we put a container out that says oil and antifreeze, empty containers, will you accept it? Simple as that. I don't believe that there's a BC, we will not accept these as a recycling product. I recycled them wherever I've lived before under CRD. That's just an observation on the comment that was made. With regards to saying about Tom Tinsley's voice and things, I'd just like to clarify. Speaker for the camera session over there is at the back. Everything that you speak through is from the front. So every time Tom speaks, unfortunately, it sounds way louder. It sounds way more interruptive and intimidating than it actually comes across had it been your input. That's simply a scope of the room. If that speaker was moved to the front next to there, his voice would project forwards the same as all of the rest of you. And it's just the logistics of this room. So, you know, to be fair to Tom, I think it sounded worse that he, you know, objected or whatever, and it came over in a much harsher way, purely because of the surround sound speaker system and where it was placed. So I'd just like to make that observation. My question for those who may or not have read your budgets and don't look at your taxes completely. And I think it was only back 3 or 4 years, but I could be wrong, so I'm not going to quote the year, but the budget for Parks and Rec was 29%. You are now paying 57% taxes in the village for Parks and Rec. I'd like to know what is Parks and Rec. That equates to almost $1,500 on an average house in the village, depending on what size your house is and price and everything, right? So most people would not pay a gym membership. We don't have trails, we don't have a dog park. So if somebody can clarify, either after the meeting or during the meeting, where 57% of the budget for the village of Sayward is Parks and Rec.
As Councillor Paulson stated earlier, the questions come out during question period. The staff will get back to you.
That's fine. I'm totally open to that. I just want people to be aware, 57% of your taxes go to Parks and Rec.
But again, you should be addressing council because
Sorry,
you do
council.
that. You're here asking us questions.
Our taxes go to Parks and Rec, and I would like to quantify as to what that is and where it increased so suddenly from 29% not too long ago. And I'm sorry, I didn't write the year down. And just finally, it's going to sound critical, except for election canvassing. I haven't heard from a single one of them, really. There's been no letters written. There's been no actual attendance down in the village. You're not at the Heritage Hall meetings, farmers markets. Worse during the Newcastle fire. We have a seriously senior population here. I understand we have Alertable. I understand we have BC Wildfire app. Most of us gained information onto what was happening from photographs on Facebook that other people had taken, not the village, not the fire department. It was purely somebody had gone up and said, you know, here's a photograph. We had seriously elderly people wondering, how long have I got? How am I going to pack my house up? How am I going to move? What am I going to do? Regardless of the people in the valley separately who had chickens and goats and all that logistics, but individual people. I spent most of my time finding an update and communicating to my elderly neighbours. Don't panic. They've got, you know, 90 firefighters on it. They've got 4 helicopters. It's over the ridge. It's going to have to come up the ridge and down. Fire doesn't progress down very quickly. It's got to really have a lot of fuel and a lot of wind behind it. I think you really failed us as a community and as a council, that you managed to knock on doors for your vote. And I don't see any knocking on doors for communication. So it was everything else.
Okay, thank you very much. In camera, recommended resolution. Good. Oh,
One other question. And it's regards to this very topic of in camera. Earlier in the meeting, the CEO said that's an in camera topic.
correct.
And I think the Municipal Act is very clear about what things can be covered by in camera.
And there are.
And when that is invoked, it needs to be very clear about what the basis of the in-camera meeting is. And I guess the question is, why, when that was invoked, why wasn't that given detail, given about why it is an in-camera topic? That I think.
Why or the statute?
Well, no, why didn't the CEO make it clear why that was?
He can't-
in-camera
You
topic?
can't say sometimes on why it is without giving away the in-camera information, correct?
Well, I know you can,
So, I
you
mean,
can
this
have recourse to the Municipal Act, and it outlines what the particular things that allow you to have it in, and at that point, you can say the reason is it's a staff meeting or it's a legal matter or whatever. And and make it clear what those are,
Okay,
because
yeah,
otherwise
that's
people
fair.
feel that it's sometimes overused.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So then, in accordance with section 92 of the community charter, this council meeting will be closed to the public in time in order for council may give considerations to matter in accordance with the following sections of the community charter, section 90-1C, labor relations, employee relations, and 91F, law enforcement. So do we have a motion, please?
So, sorry, Mr. Mayor, sorry, just to interrupt, could you read the rest of the sentence of this second section there?
Second section is 90-1C and 90-1F.
But you didn't read the last two lines of 1F.
Oh, I'm sorry. Disclosure could be reasonably expected to harm the conduct of the investigation under enforcement of an enactment.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion, please.
I'll move that.
Thank you. Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed, motion is carried. We are and adjourned.